Well, after years of speculation and waiting, it seems like the reality of World of Warcraft coming to consoles, or at least console, may be just around the corner. To some, this might sound blasphemous, but believe me when I tell you, WoW on console looks not only very likely at this point, but also ultimately for the best. The game has, after all, been on a very public decline over the past decade, so opening up to new platforms and players could very well breathe life back into it. Plus, there's the fact that a number of MMOs, including ones that are natively feature tab target combat, have been very successful on consoles. And in WoW's case, between some currently available features and massive new ones coming in Dragonflight, the game will more than ever be very playable on gamepad, to the point where it has the ability to emulate the sort of experience you get in action combat or soft lock MMOs. You will be able to play WoW almost identically to how games like Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online play, directly controlling your character, targeting enemies just by looking at them, and interacting with objects and NPCs without the need to directly click. Take all of this and add in the recently data mined controller icons coming to the game and the impending Microsoft acquisition. At this point, I would be surprised if WoW didn't come to consoles eventually. Like, my money is on the table here, and we'll see how it all plays out. I want to dive into some of this here today, but first let's get a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Tunic. This is the top-down action-adventure game that released for PC and Xbox earlier in the year and was an immediate smash hit, pulling in plenty of 8 and 9 out of 10s from critics, and currently the game sits at a very positive user score over on Steam. Well, they are sponsoring today's video just as a way of letting people know that the game is now also available on PS4, PS5, and Nintendo Switch. To put it simply, Tunic is a fun, challenging adventure game full of mysteries and secrets to discover. It features a hostile, intricately connected world of shady forests, sprawling ruins, and labyrinth catacombs. You'll fight mighty bosses deep beneath the earth, high above the clouds, and in other strange places. You'll discover hidden treasures, collect the missing manual pages, and unearth secret relics, techniques, puzzles, and much more. If you would like to learn more and check out Tunic for yourself, go ahead and click on the link in the description below. Okay, so I want to talk about the stuff that has kind of led up to this point, the history when it comes to World of Warcraft and controller support and gamepad support, basically. So Blizzard has been slowly building towards this reality over the years, adding various features to make WoW way more controller and by extension console friendly. It all started in 2016 with Legion, where they added Action Cam. By inputting the command /console action cam on, the game's camera would shift directly behind and slightly off center of your character, making the perspective much more akin to third-person action games. On top of the new camera position, the camera and your character would also slightly adjust to follow your target as it moved. Think like in Dark Souls or Elden Ring when you're locked onto an enemy, how the camera moves to keep them in focus. Action Cam works along those same lines. Then in 2020, with the launch of Shadowlands, they added native gamepad support, meaning it was no longer necessary to use external programs like WoW Mapper to play with a controller. Although to get a smooth and more console-like experience, you did still want to use various add-ons like console port and immersion, but nevertheless, native support meant one less hoop to jump through. And now, with the upcoming launch of Dragonflight, they are adding what I consider to be two of the biggest hurdles that, by putting them in the game, put them that much closer to really a natural feeling gamepad and console gameplay. And that is action combat and near object targeting, both of which open up the game to be played like an action or soft lock style MMO. Think about how combat and targeting work in games like Guild Wars 2 or Elder Scrolls Online. With these additional features, WoW will now be able to more or less emulate that. So first, there's action combat. With this new mode, you will automatically target whatever enemy your character is directly facing. So instead of having to tab or to select a target specifically by like clicking on it, your target is automatically set to whatever is in front of you. If you turn and face a new enemy, that becomes your new target. Now, WoW has kind of had an auto select for some time, specifically with certain melee and cleave skills. If no target was selected, it would automatically pick up one of the enemies that were hit. But this new action combat feature is a totally different thing. It removes removes the need to manually swap or manually select anything. It will just automatically select things that you're facing. And this also means for ranged characters and ranged abilities, you will now be able to target them without tabbing, without clicking. And again, this makes WoW not only function more like a third-person action game, but also way more playable on gamepad. Also coming in Dragonflight is the new Near Object Interact key. Now this is similar to action combat, but for NPCs and objects. With this mode enabled, whenever you walk next to an NPC or an interactable object, you can simply hit a single key or a button if on a controller, and it will automatically select and interact with it, eliminating the need to click. This looks to function almost exactly like it does in Guild Wars 2. As you walk near any NPCs or any environmental objects, as soon as you get close enough, you can just hit F and it will automatically interact with them, start talking with them, looting, gathering, whatever. This will work in WoW for things like NPCs, quest objectives, mailboxes, anything that is lootable. If whatever you're standing next to can be interacted with this new feature, you can do so with a single input. And then the cherry on top is that it looks like Blizzard is adding even more controller official support. Thanks to some recently data mined information from the Dragonflight beta, they discovered icons for just about every controller input type. So they have the native support, they have the icons, they are right there. Now, WoW has been mostly playable with a controller for many years now. This is primarily due to the fantastic add-on console port, which not only remapped your keyboard and mouse inputs to be usable on a gamepad, but also came with an entire UI overhaul, making it way easier to navigate with a joystick and D-pad. I've played around with the add-on on and off over the years and have been mostly impressed with how functional and playable it actually is. And now, between the action cam, the native gamepad support, and the upcoming action combat and near object interact functions in Dragonflight, the game will literally be playable either as it currently is, a tab target MMO, or as an action combat MMO. Like, short of doing the UI overhauls themselves, Blizzard has basically everything they need to officially port WoW to console right now. And I feel like I need to really emphasize just how big these new Dragonflight editions are, because they are massive improvements to the controller experience. So the way targeting currently works on a gamepad using that console port add-on is that you either need to tab target onto an enemy or emulate a mouse click by selecting them. The add-on does this by binding tab to one of the gamepad inputs. This is customizable, but basically a button push replaces the tab key. Or you need to emulate the mouse click with this on-screen crosshair, which indicates the mouse's default position. So then by clicking in the right thumbstick and lining up the crosshair, you can effectively functionally mouse click on an enemy, on an object, on an NPC. But both of these options, the tab or the clicking, just feel slightly too clunky if I'm being honest. For most abilities, especially for ranged classes, you need to hit an extra button before you start using your skill, before you start attacking, before you do anything. And for that reason, I felt way more comfortable playing melee classes when playing with a gamepad, because like I mentioned, there are many melee abilities and cleave abilities that can be cast without a target, and then the game will auto-select the nearest target that was hit, and it's pretty great. So for that reason, playing like a rogue, playing a warrior, playing a paladin all feel fantastic. But the range classes require that extra step of tabbing or lining up the crosshair and clicking, and it just doesn't feel right. And it's just as bad as, if not even worse, for interactable objects, talking to NPCs, looting, clicking on quest objectives. All of that require you to line up that crosshair and emulate the mouse click on the gamepad, and it feels way too cumbersome, really. So replacing all of this with the new Near Object Interact will mean, just like in ESO or Guild Wars 2, you just need to stand next to something and hit a single input. It's clunky right now. This is going to be way better, an amazing quality of life improvement, and just overall feel. It'll feel a lot more natural. Now, when it comes to the idea of playing on gamepad or the idea of WoW coming to consoles, there's a few major concerns that tend to come up. One of them is, are there enough inputs? Let me say this, the answer is unequivocally yes. So by default, with the current console port add-on, the setup is 12 buttons and 2 modifiers. So you've got the 4 face buttons, the 4 D-pad, the left and right bumper, and then start and select. Those are the 12 inputs. And then left and right trigger act as modifiers, sort of like swapping hotbars. So you can hold down left trigger to get 12 more, hold down right trigger to get 12 more, hold down them both to get 12 more, including the default 12. those 3 additional layers add up to 48 total skill slots just using 2 modifiers. And if that wasn't enough, you could technically add another modifier. I mean, you could just keep adding modifiers, adding more hotbars. So let's say you did left trigger and right trigger as well as left bumper, so 3 modifiers. This would remove 1 open slot because you're taking away left bumper. While it brings the total number of slots down to 11, you have 3 extra combinations, bringing the total with 3 modifiers and 11 buttons to 88 skills. And you could go even further by adding a 4th modifier. So basically, to answer the question is are there enough inputs on a gamepad to have all of your skills? Yes, absolutely. There's way more than enough. You can totally make it work. And you should be aware that it works just by the virtue of the other console MMOs that exist. Final Fantasy XIV in particular, you can do it. It is certainly possible. And then on top of that, there is also the utility ring, which works just like a radial menu in a lot of other games. You can pull this up and you're able to bind various objects, things like potions, your Hearthstone, and even skills onto this radial menu, adding even more skills. Now, enough inputs is one question, which hopefully we've answered. Another one is, does it play well? As I mentioned, in the time that I've played WoW using a gamepad and console port add-on, it was absolutely enjoyable and functional. Was it ideal? Was it flawless? No and no. But I think with these upcoming Dragonflight changes, it is going to be a heck of a lot better. Like, I'm certain, actually. I am genuinely excited to give Dragonflight a go using a gamepad with the new action combat and the near object targeting. It's not going to become my default. I still prefer keyboard and mouse, but those 2 additions are going to make a gamepad feel way, way, way more natural. And again, this really isn't a question of like either or. The biggest advantage for playing any MMO on a gamepad is it just feels more casual and relaxed. The idea that I could just like sit on a sofa and use a big screen TV and play WoW just chilling with a gamepad, it's a different experience than like sitting here and trying to maintain posture playing WoW at my keyboard and mostly failing at maintaining posture. Like, at least I can get rid of the facade when I'm on the couch. I'm on the couch. I'm sitting improperly. It's fine. It's not really an either or situation, and there's certainly some value, even if it's just a different way to experience the game, in playing on a gamepad. Now, another big concern that comes up is, could you play competitively? The answer is yes. People have, in fact. There are videos all over YouTube of people clearing mythic raids and reaching Gladiator using only a gamepad. It is absolutely possible. Now, again, is it ideal? No, not really. Probably not, especially when it comes to the existing clunkiness of targeting enemies and all of that. But there's no question at this point that the hardest and most competitive content in the game has and can be cleared just by using a controller. And again, this is going to become even easier with the new changes in Dragonflight. With all of that said, Blizzard has clearly been making moves to make WoW way more natural on a gamepad. While console port is an unofficial add-on, Blizzard themselves have added native gamepad support. They added action cam, and they are adding that action combat and that new object targeting. The only thing they have left to do is to make an official UI overhaul themselves. And then at that point, while I know it's not just the snap of a finger, much of the pieces will be in place for an actual console release. And I think that they should. There's a few reasons why. For one, WoW's PC player base kind of been on a mostly continuous decline since Cataclysm. This is not a secret. It is a well-known secret, if anything. Also, other MMOs have proven to be quite successful. Look at games like BDO, ESO, and the most comparable thing to WoW, Final Fantasy XIV. That is a by default tab target game that seems to work quite well on console and also has been quite successful. And then, of course, can't leave out the fact that Microsoft is acquiring, or they're in the process of acquiring, Activision Blizzard King. And with that, and the focus that they have on Game Pass and trying to add value, World of Warcraft subscription included in Game Pass, even if it was at the premium tiers, sounds like a lot of value. They are all about that, and that seems entirely plausible. I guess one of my biggest questions at this point would be how they handle crossplay. Would PC and console players be playing on the same servers? Would it be entirely separate? Different games have done different things here. For example, Final Fantasy XIV does have crossplay between console and PC, whereas ESO have their own dedicated servers for each. Xbox players play together, PlayStation players play together, PC players play together. ESO has decided to separate them. WoW could go either way. especially when it comes to people who might be concerned about, you know, the dumbing down of the game, as if that isn't already an existing concern that's been trending throughout World of Warcraft, retail World of Warcraft's expansions. I don't know that a gamepad, which, as I mentioned, has upwards of like 80 inputs, would necessarily dumb it down. I understand the concern, but I just don't feel that bothered by it, I suppose. And I don't know how like authentic of a worry that really is. I think the game is going in the direction that it's going, and the direction that it's going, with all of the support that Blizzard has already been doing, even without the announcement of official console release, it just makes playing the game here a lot more feasible and even enjoyable. There's, especially playing as the melee classes, the range is another story, and I think healing is an extra layer of difficulty and clunkiness, almost certainly. But playing melee class with a controller, it feels really good. It honestly does. It's pretty chill. I could just like lay back, hang out, and use this. I don't know. I've had fun. I've enjoyed it. So obviously we will see. Nothing is official yet, but they are so close to being able to do this. And I would like to see it. I would genuinely like to see it. I think the idea of like a fresh start action version of WoW on a gamepad, like I would bust out the Xbox to try that. I absolutely would. Just like I try fresh start servers in WoW, just like I try classic WoW. Give me another angle into playing WoW and I'll probably check it out, and this sounds like a good one. But yeah, there you go. That is the video. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.